Hi, I'm Mike Castronovo, your Music City mortgage coach. And in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to utilize the all-in-one loan for your investment properties. Now, this video is going to assume that you've already watched some of the other videos and you understand a bit about the all-in-one and how it works. So if this is your first time visiting the site, go to my YouTube channel and you can go ahead and watch some of those other videos to get yourself familiar with it. But I'm going to just dive right into it here with an example on an investment property and how this can work to help you grow your wealth and increase your real estate portfolio faster. All right, so this is my website, and you'll be able to go to this page and you'll be able to run these numbers yourself. But what I always recommend to people is that they give me a call first to go through these. But when you scroll down to the bottom of the page, just go right to the center there, you're going to see all-in-one loan. And then when you get to the all-in-one page, just scroll down to the bottom and you're going to find the interactive comparison simulator. You can just close that up and minimize that. You can come in here, you can go start a new simulation, or you can enter a code. If you start a new simulation and go on that, it's going to ask you to select a new loan or existing loan. So if you're looking at a current investment property that you have a high rate on, or even if you have a low rate on, this can still work for that. So you'll want to check that, and then you'll come in and let's just say we're going to do a new loan and investment property. So pretty simple there. So in order to save time with this video, we're going to go ahead and use a scenario that I've already set up, and we're going to say enter a code from a saved simulation. I will send you the code to yours once we've worked through it together so that you can go through and play with it on your own. Once we have that in, the next thing we want to go to is this compare tab. So you're going to say comparing it to a new loan, or you can say comparing it to an existing loan and investment property. Now for this example, I said, let's take a home value of about $400,000 with 70% down, which would give you a $280,000 loan balance on a 30-year fixed. Let's say what you're looking at for comparison purposes, or what you currently have, is a 7.5% interest rate. If it's an existing loan, it'll ask you how long you've been in there. So let's say you've owned it for 2 years or 3 years on that mortgage that's existing. You'll plop those months in there. Then it should automatically calculate the payment that you're having on your principal and interest portion. We go to the next page for deposits, and let's assume that that property is renting out for $3,000 monthly. And let's say you've got cash that you normally keep sitting around in other accounts, not necessarily for this property's purposes, but just for emergency funds, etc. And let's say you're going to put that $10,000 into that account to automatically start to offset your mortgage balance. And you'll put that in month 2 once the loan is set up. So you've got your $3,000 coming in, you got that $10,000 one-time deposit, and we go next to the spending. So the spending, we're going to assume that you're keeping your mortgage payment the same as what you would on your existing loan or the new loan that you would be taking out. So that was that $1,957. The system will automatically calculate an estimated taxes and insurance. Now this is a number that's kind of calculated on a national basis. So depending on where you're located, for example, in my state of Tennessee, that number will probably be a lot lower. So you can go ahead and adjust that as need be. And then what we have is, other than that, the balance is left over. That's sitting in the account. Now, the other thing that will sit in that deposit account, aside from maybe that $10,000 that you normally have, is you can leave funds for your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, and if you have a reserve fund that you normally keep, that can all be held in that account until the time you need it, versus letting it sit in the bank and letting the bank utilize your money. So again, we got the spending there, and then we calculate results. And just by using that positive cash flow on the monthly payment that you're receiving from your renter, that's going to pay off the loan in 19 and a half years versus 30 years on the traditional. And that's going to save you over $120,000. Now, a couple important things here. Rate assumptions. As of today's date, it's actually, when I'm recording this, is December 30th, and we're using December 1st index rate of 5.12. And as of yesterday, that rate was down to 4.82. So we're using the 5.12. We're kind of still at the highs right here. The Fed hasn't started cutting rates yet. The yield curve is inverted, which means when the Fed does start cutting, they cut the overnight rate. So short-term rates will fall faster than long-term rates. So you don't have to worry about refinancing as rates fall. You're automatically going to be able to ride that roller coaster down every single month. There's a 4% margin typically on this and there's some ways that you can pay that down or change that about. But I like to just use the 4% because the rate you'll see really doesn't matter. So that 4% margin is going to put you at the 9.12. You've got a floor rate on an investment property of 4.75, maximum rate 15.125 based on where we're starting. This assumption is assuming that we remain at that initial rate of 9.12 and rates never head lower. Just to kind of show you a historical graph here. So this is a 25-year chart on the constant maturing treasury, along with the 30-year fixed rate, historical averages, and the effective Fed funds rate. Now that light blue line that you see here, going back 25 years, we're at basically all-time highs. When we get down to zero, that CMT rate basically goes right along with the Fed funds rate and tracks almost right on top of that versus your 30-year fixed mortgage, and also versus your prime rate, which is what your HELOCs are normally based on. So again, in this example, we're assuming that it remains at that initial rate. And those results were that we're going to save $121,000. Now you can go in here and make rate assumptions. What happens if the Fed were to raise rates, which I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks that they're going to do that anymore, but let's just say that they did. Let's say they raised them 1%, and let's say they raised them 1% and they stayed there for the rest of the life of the loan. So for the next 19 years, the Fed's raised another percent from where we're at rather than cutting rates, and rates never come down for that 19-year period of time. And that right about there will put you at about break evens. You would actually be down by, what's that, $23,000 roughly. So if rates go up 1% and stay there, this wouldn't necessarily work for you. But when we come back down to the reality, rates are going to go down, and we get even to the historical average on that. Now it drops it down to 14.3 years, and you save $275,000 in interest. Pretty simple to see that it's massive savings. Now, again, there might be other funds that you've got available that you can put against this, and that will drive it down even faster. The pay down summary that you can click on here, we can see. So we're comparing that traditional 30-year fixed at 7.5. Remember, we're using 9.125 in here, or the historical average, which is a little bit lower. But with that historical average, we're at a 3.076%. Let's go back and change that to remaining at the initial rate. And when we look at that pay down summary, you're looking at 7.5% versus 5.674. Well, that effective APR rate is much lower than your actual note rate because of the way this product works, because it's simple interest, and because you have the offset feature going. And so the last thing that we'll want to look at is the pay down table. When we pull this up, we can see the amount of principal paid on the all-in-one versus the principal being paid on your traditional mortgage. So remember, your traditional mortgage is a predetermined mortgage payment. You're going to pay X amount every month, and a small little portion of that is going to go towards principal, and the rest is going to go towards interest. With the all-in-one, everything that goes into your payment is principal. You're paying principal first, and so that's knocking things down faster. And because you're keeping your mortgage balance lower on a nightly basis, it's going to get calculated at the end of the month, not paid out until the end of the 21st of the following month. And what happens is that just simply that interest gets tacked back on to your loan balance. So you're paying principal, the interest gets put back on top of your principal. Whenever you're pulling money out for any of your spending purposes, you're paying your property taxes, you're paying your hazard insurance, that will come out of the account. That'll bump the loan balance back up. But we've already calculated all that into those numbers. So this is assuming that everything just rolls the same, and you can see how quickly you start building up equity. And I'm just going to go even after the first year. Now, remember, we put in $10,000 of an initial deposit in that account. So the principal paid is really $7,460 versus $2,581. You start getting into year two at 24 months here, you're now at 13,000 versus 5,300. Scroll down to, let's see where we're at after 5 years. So after 5 years, 60 months, you've now paid down 44,000 principal. Again, take that 10,000 out. So 34,000 in principal reduction versus 15,000 on your traditional mortgage. Again, this is keeping everything the same, comparing apples to apples. You're doing nothing different with your spending habits, and this is how much further you come out ahead. Now, the all-in-one does require 30% equity. However, once you get to that point where you have that 44,000 sitting in there, so let's say you want to buy another $400,000 property, what happens then? So your strategy may be different, but let's assume for this example that your process is you're looking to create equity in your property, and the faster your equity grows, you want to be able to harvest some of that cash equity out and buy your next investment property. A lot of people would ask, why not just do a traditional home equity loan? Well, a traditional home equity loan is going to cut you off after 10 years. You're not going to be able to pull that out. With the all-in-one loan, you're able to keep this for a total of 30 years. After the first 10 years, it's going to reduce by 1/240th every month, so that at the end of 30 years, it's now down to a zero balance. You don't have a balloon payment at the end. However, you can see that that's going to give you a long period of time where you can pull cash out to use as down payment funds for your next investment purchase. And typically what we see is something like this. The borrower has paid principal down faster than expected. They're able to pull equity back out. They pay that down. In this case, they said college tuition costs, but you can just, for this purposes, just make this all buy rental properties. Bought a rental property, paid a medical expense, but it keeps paying off and people keep utilizing those funds. So let's come back to the pay down table. And again, we said after 60 months, 5 years, you've already paid down 44,000 in principal reduction versus your traditional mortgage, you'd only be at 15,000 in principal reduction. So now you're able to pull out those funds, use it as a 10% down payment, utilizing other programs that are available. Again, you need 30% on your first investment property with an all-in-one. You can utilize this on up to 2 properties simultaneously, but what most people will do is they'll use it on 1 or 2 properties, depending on their cash flow, get things paid down as fast as possible, and then keep reusing that loan, not incurring any additional closing costs. And you're able to access those funds again for up to 30 years. So getting to that point where you can pull out 44,000 versus the traditional mortgage, we would have to go, let's see where we hit that. Basically here we hit the 44,000 mark. So that's 136 months. That's going to be 11.3 years before you're able to pull things out to invest in your next property versus 5 years had you taken the all-in-one. So hopefully this makes sense. Again, you can go to my website and play with this on your own, or if you'd like, and what I always recommend is give me a call. We'll set up a time, do a 20-minute Zoom chat. We'll make sure we get it set up properly, just in case you got different things within your scenario and you got some questions on how to make sure you enter all the numbers properly on the calculator. And then after that, you can go in and play with those scenarios to your heart's content. So call or text me at the number below, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.